Hey y'all, it's Mary Hyatt, and I am so excited that you're here for this month's topic, which is all about body movement. If you have triggers around exercise, or maybe you have a hard time feeling comfortable moving your body in a particular way, or if you simply want to be more embodied, this month is for you. I'm going to be sharing how to think about movement in a totally new and different way that leaves you feeling sensually alive and grounded in your body. So come on, let's jump into it.
Welcome to the Living Fully Alive podcast with Mary Hyatt, here to help you find your authentic voice, learn how to love yourself, and embrace your life. And now, your host, life and mindset coach, body love advocate, and doTERRA Presidential Diamond, Mary Hyatt.
Hey everybody, it is Mary, and I am thrilled to introduce to you our very special guest speaker today on the podcast, Amanda Leaveck. She uses science and magic to live deliciously, and she helps others do the same. Her nourishing services include yoga, meditation, coaching, and her virtual membership program, Science and Magic. Amanda's research-based approach to mindfulness is ignited by intuition, love, and a deep reverence for the unknown. In addition to attaining a Bachelor's of Science in Neuroscience for her undergrad, she graduated from the Rolfe Institute of Structural Integration in 2017, where she focused on the integral relationship between connective tissue and the nervous system. Y'all, she's just freaking brilliant. And through her formal education, independent studies, hands-on work with clients, and over a decade of teaching yoga and dance, Amanda has a deep understanding of the human body. She adores creating experiences for all of us to more deliciously connect with our own bodies, and in doing so, ignite the unique brilliance that lies within each of us. So she is the perfect person for this episode, centered all around body movement. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Amanda Leaveck. Hey guys, it is Mary, and y'all know that this week is my favorite week of the month, where I get to bring on a special guest expert around the topic of the month, and I cannot wait to introduce you to today's guest. Y'all have already heard about her in the bio. She is amazing, and honestly, like from a personal standpoint, I'm just gonna geek out on this conversation as much as you guys do, so you might hear like a little bit of fangirl Mary come through, because this is totally like my favorite thing to talk about. And I get somebody who is like, you know, way smarter than me and has gone to school for all of this. And I get to hang out with her for like 45 minutes. So I cannot wait. But before we hop into that part of the episode, I want to take a moment to rewind and recap the past two episodes, because this month we're talking about body movement. And we've really been able to set a beautiful foundation that's going to lead us perfectly into today's episode. And the first episode of this month, we talked about finding the joy in movement. I went into kind of a foundational episode about how there are so many, just whether it's old traumas or wounds, past judgments, all these kinds of ways of thinking about movement that lead us to either overdoing it or not doing it at all. And so we've got some feelings around movement. And so I kind of get into some of those objections in the first episode and talk about ways of thinking about it differently, so that you end up finding pleasure and joy, and it's not something you think of as punishment. So go check out that episode. And then last week, I brought on my eldest sister, Megan Hyatt Miller, and we had a beautiful, candid conversation around what it looks like to use the body to process through stress. And she, as you guys know, is a mom of 5. 3 of her kids have special needs. And she's also the soon-to-be CEO of my dad's company. So she has so much going on, and yet she's found a way to move her body in a way that's more gentle. You know, she's really just walks, and it's really beautiful to see how something so simple and so gentle like walking can help her keep up with the demands of her life. So that's a really beautiful conversation. I think that if you feel like movement is not for you, you don't have time, maybe you're not in a body where you think it is, you know, capable of moving. Megan lives in a larger body. It's just a beautiful episode to relate to. And I think you guys would really enjoy that. So go back, listen to those first 2 episodes, and make sure to retweet them, comment on Instagram, share it on Facebook, send it to your friends and family. And now grab a pen, grab a paper, because this is going to be, I guarantee you, one of those episodes that you're probably going to take more notes. You might even have to come back and listen to this again, because I'm convinced that this is going to be that just full of nuggets and wisdom. So y'all, Amanda's amazing. Y'all know it. You heard her bio. I hope that you are already intrigued and maybe don't even have a clue what she does. And I think we're going to get into all of that in a way that you go, oh my God, I had no idea the body was so amazing. So Amanda, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so happy to be here. Any chance I get to have a conversation about the body, I am all for it.
Girl, you have one heck of a resume. I got to say, like, it is so fascinating. And I think it's amazing to see, I'm sure, what was kind of an intuitive journey through, like, ooh, I want to learn this, and ooh, I want to learn this. So give us a little Amanda history and take us back to what initially sparked this interest for you around the body, around neuroscience, and bring us up to speed on how you got to where you're at today.
I studied neuroscience in college, and I majored in neuroscience, and I minored in dance. And everyone would always kind of giggle at me, like, what? They would just not really understand it. Again, I was following my intuition of, I like both of these things. And I found that often in my classes for neuroscience, things that I would learn very cerebrally, I would get to later that day in the afternoon, go and experience them in the dance studio. Because throughout my college education, I was both in the lab, in lectures, and then also in the dance studio for hours and hours and hours.
Wow.
So I got to learn about the brain and sensation and perception, and then go experience it and feel it. And it wasn't calculated. I wasn't like, I'm going to do this to embody neuroscience. It kind of happened. Years down the road, I slowly figured out I'm not a lab person. I think research is so important, but I like learning about the research and experiencing it. I'm very much a somatic learner versus being the one to conduct the research. So understanding that niche, but I didn't know what sort of career that would take me to. At the time, I was just following what felt good, following what I enjoyed. And then I ended up going to school for structural integration. I graduated from the Rolf Institute. And at this point in my life, I really got to dive into understanding the nervous system through my hands. So Rolfing in structural integration, we get trained in how to work with connective tissue and fascia. And the nervous systems within the fascia, as well as all of our posture, memories, the way we move. It's kind of like the wetsuit in the body. Everything's connected. Like, think of a big cobweb wetsuit all over the body. That's what the fascia is. And I learned so much through going to that school, through embodied learning. And I still see clients, a small amount, but really my heart and my soul lies in helping people find a way to connect to their own inner brilliance and their own bodies and their own hearts and their own neural pathways. And I spend most of my time offering services that do that through yoga, through coaching, through a membership program with online classes. And there's so much wisdom in each of us. And I've learned that throughout the years through a direct experience.
I love that. It's just fascinating to get into the intricacies of how, like you said, this web of connections is operating for each of us. And I talked about, this was several months ago, we talked about sort of this mind-body connection, but I haven't taken it to the idea of movement. So it's like thinking about the fascia, thinking about the connective tissue. My understanding is that we store emotion within the fascia, within the tissues of the body. And if we can't express that or can't move that out of the body, it can contribute to chronic pain, chronic illness, disease, etc. So how do you help move it out of the tissue, move it out of the fascia? Like, can you talk a little bit about why that piece of getting it out is so important?
I find that step one in moving anything is being able to be with. So often when there's an uncomfortable sensation, and rightfully so, we want to get it out. And there happens to be quite a bit of resistance in the body when we attend to something wanting it to move out.
Yeah.
Think of if you were to sit down and have a conversation with someone and you were having heartache from a breakup. And rather than that person listening to you, that person was like starting to give you advice of how to move forward. Really, sometimes we just want to be listened to. We want to be heard. Same with the body. So step one is just being with and saying, hi, whatever sensation you are, however uncomfortable you are, I'm here with you and I'm going to breathe with you. And then the movement is intuitive. It's from the body. It's interesting, the mind-body connection. We see these two things as separate, but the mind is all over the body. The mind is the body, where it's one. The brain is an organ, and sometimes in my meditations with clients, I have them see the two as the same. Our head's on this like little neck, so we think it's like its own little operating system, and in some ways it is. But there's also so much thinking and sensing and perception that goes on in the body. So letting the body move itself versus being very strategic. Like, I'm going to move my arm this way to get this thing out. And that could be a wiggle, that could be a shake, that could be a subtle shift. But it's following something that's not in the cranium and knowing that the body has the ability to think on its own and its own wisdom. It's hard to wrap our minds around because we're such a head-centered society, but I hope that makes somewhat sense.
No, it does. And I want to take it deeper because I'm just imagining, like, you're so right. I mean, we talk about this idea of embodiment, of being able to move the way the body wants to move and really be in our bodies. But I think that is such a foreign concept for most people. Like you said, I mean, we totally value the brain over the body so often. It's like, we know how to think about something. It was funny. I have my own membership group, and in that we do 5 days of journaling practice all around the theme of the month. And so in that, I give them like further resources for what they could read around the topic of the month. And so I was laughing when I was like coming up with a book list, like, here, read about embodiment. And I was like, this is just like, it's totally missing the point, like sometimes you can't read about it. You have to do it. So how do you instruct people when they haven't ever really been in their body, felt their body? Where do you begin to learn how to create that kind of connection where you can even hear what it wants?
There's a lot of different tools offered, especially in our day and age, with mindfulness practices, breath work, meditation, movement. There's so many classes.
Yeah.
So I always work with people in step one, finding the tool that works for you the best. Some people love dance. Some people feel uncomfortable with dancing or moving. Some people would rather have more of a structured movement, like yoga postures. Some would rather be still, and every single person is different. And this makes sense because we all have billions of different neurons in our bodies that connect in trillions of different ways. So quite literally, we each have our own galaxy. We're all experiencing the world around us in a different way. We all experience our bodies in different ways. So the first step, I think, is finding something that works. And that may be different trials of like, oh, that didn't work, or that did. And not being scared to say that didn't work. Like, okay, moving on. Just because it worked for someone doesn't mean that it's for you. So trusting that intuition, and then following what feels good and following what feels intuitive.
I love that. And I think you're right. I mean, it is different for each person, which is beautiful because there really are, like, now more than ever, there's so many options. And whether you're in a larger body and a smaller body, depending on your activity level or your cardio conditioning or whatever, there's so many ways and entry points and avenues in for it. And it's interesting because I think about this concept of movement, and so many of us only see like the purpose of movement to be about weight loss or about changing our bodies aesthetically. And so can you talk a little bit more about the other ways that movement is needed and like why it's beneficial to us outside of just this sort of one centered way around, oh, I want to actually physically or aesthetically change my body? Why else what are the benefits of somebody else moving in a different way?
I know from experience that I have processed so many of my emotions through movement, so much negative emotion and so much embodiment of positive emotion. I actually used to work quite often, throughout my 20s with a dance group, and we used to explore different emotions and processing and storytelling through the body.
Ooh.
And I remember I would go to, sometimes throughout my dance education, I'd go into a dance studio and we'd be given 20 minutes to just improv, like on our own, like everyone doing their own thing in the studio, maybe some light music in the background, maybe not.
Yeah.
But I really had to get out of my head and just let my body move and not worry about, often I close my eyes, not really worry about what I looked like or had any sort of intention, just kind of free floating. And after I would be done, I'd feel like I had a massage. I was like,
Totally.
wow, my body is working through all these little layers of tension and tautness and also space.
Yeah.
And it just did it. I didn't have to think about it or try, or there wasn't a regimen. And I always say this to everybody, but our bodies know what they need if our head can get out of the way. So often intuitive movement, whatever feels good, whatever your heart's calling you to do, you'll work through a lot of held tension or held emotion. Movement can also be really soothing to the nervous system. If it's in a state of stress, it can help to discharge energy. So just moving from a state of fight or flight to a state of rest and digest, movement can be really effective for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about the processing of emotions through the body, like from a scientific standpoint? Because I kind of get from like my little bit of knowledge that I have, it's like if I'm really stressed and I just sort of either dance it out or run it out or lift it out or whatever it might be, something that feels vigorous, then I can sometimes take that stress from a level 10 to maybe a level 5 or kind of move it down, or take my anxiety from being like, wow, crazy to, okay, I can manage this. I got this. But I'm just curious, scientifically, what's happening in the brain or the body that movement is really helping to process emotions? Hey, y'all. I'm sure you've been hearing me mention my Fully Alive Circle membership, and you might be wondering what it is and how you can join. So let me tell you a little bit about it. So the Circle membership is a safe place for women to gather together in a heart-centered community to take this deep dive into personal transformation. So it's my online membership where you'll learn how to find yourself again through daily devotional practices. Inside of our private Facebook group, I share resources like guided meditations, yoga practices, essential oil recipes, journal prompts, and so much more that dive into our monthly topic that we explore right here on the Living Fully Alive podcast. And all those resources are delivered to your inbox weekly to help you create powerful change in your life. So if you're looking for an affordable way to continue your journey of living fully alive, then definitely check out the Fully Alive Circle membership. Just go to maryhyatt.com/circle and you can find out all the details and join. All right, now back to this week's episode.
When our body's stressed, there's a chemical release of hormones to help keep the body on high alert. And we have this feeling in society that stress is bad. Stress isn't always bad. Stress helps us survive. It helps us get through. Adrenaline is released to help give us this surge of energy and superhuman power. Endorphins are released. Cortisol is released to keep our body on high alert. So our muscles will tense up, especially our limbs, to help us flee or fight. Heart rate will increase. Dopamine's released in the brain to increase psychomotor speed. So literally, stress is a chemical reaction in the body, and it's designed to help us. What happens, one thing that makes us unique to humans is that we can turn the stress response on literally by thought alone. So we can have a stressful experience. Let's say we get in an argument with a loved one.
Yeah.
Then we think about that experience. Same chemicals are releasing in the body as if, you were there. And then we go to someone and we share that experience. We talk about it, we ruminate over it. Still, those stress hormones are going through the body. So many of us are kind of stuck in that pattern. That's what chronic stress is. It drains the body of energy. And on the flip side, the rest and digest, it's referred to as the parasympathetic nervous system. This is the side of the nervous system designed to repair and restore, turn the digestive system back on. And when we have all of these hormones surging through the body in a state of stress, we need a way to release energy. So movement can really help to discharge energy first and foremost. And then it can also bring us back to the present moment. Like, here I am right now, and right now in this moment, I'm safe. Because if I'm moving and I'm present within my movement, I'm not thinking about that argument with a loved one. And those stress hormones aren't surging. So often with clients, it doesn't work to go from a state of high stress to just stillness, because there's all this energy that needs to be discharged and they don't feel safe. So movement might be this is why people really like to work out hard sometimes, and I work with clients, maybe you want to work out really hard before you drop into a still meditation.
It makes so much sense, because you're absolutely right. When you're in that just high vibrating, almost like beta brain state, you can't shift down into the lower brain waves like that. Obviously I think you probably could with a lot of training, but it's just easier, almost like going from fifth gear to fourth to third to second versus trying to like drop all the way to first gear like that. You got to kind of like ease yourself down the nervous system path and coming back to the body. Like, I love that idea of just when you're in your physical body, you can't be playing that narrative over and over again. It makes me think a lot about Joe Dispenza's work. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but just that idea of like being addicted to that old emotional state and replaying it. Like, I was just thinking, gosh, like how often that happens where you start telling your friend or a therapist or a coach what happened, and all of a sudden, you're right, everything gets turned on, activated within the body, and it's like you're there all over again, except it's the next day or the next year or 20 years later or whenever it is. It's just amazing to think about that connection. And I'm curious if there's a benefit, like you're talking kind of about vigorous exercise versus some of that more restorative yoga practice. Is there more of a better effect for vigorous exercise, or is it better to have a lot of gentle movement? What kind of movement is best for our brains, for our nervous system? Like, how do we know where to go when we're looking at both of those options?
It's different for every single person, and it varies throughout different stages of life.
Okay.
I would say that our society in general gears more towards that vigorous workout and being depleted. We live in a very active, forward-thinking society, especially in the Western world.
Yeah.
So in general, to balance that vigorous exercise out, it's really important to also find slow, restorative movement. Or even stillness at times, because the body will, through that parasympathetic nervous system, find its own way to rest and digest and restore and replenish. It just needs the space to do so. Yeah.
It makes me think, I had adrenal fatigue years ago, and I remember that one of the things that I learned is that vigorous exercise was horrible when you're in a state of adrenal fatigue and you have low cortisol, and all of that is like, you're just so depleted. And we've been taught, I think, that, oh yeah, if I work out, that equals being healthy, like vigorous exercise, cardio, lifting weights, whatever. And in reality, when your adrenals are shot and you're already kind of working at a deficit, what I was learning is that doing those types of really intense exercise programs was more detrimental to the body. And for a long time, I just did super gentle restorative yoga or really slow walks, which is challenging for the mind, because you're going, I'm not achieving anything. Like, I'm not, burning off these calories. And yet it was giving my body the opportunity to repair itself. And I just think about this year of 2020 in particular and all the stress that people are under. It's just kind of interesting for me to think about people who are in states of stress. I think where a lot of people go is, well, let me work out harder, but maybe what we need more than anything are some of these more gentle practices. I could just see like such a invitation there to slow way down. Have you seen that in the people that you've worked this year, that they've had to kind of shift to more gentle movement?
It's interesting because it's almost the opposite. And for me
Oh,
too, I find that people have been very slow in their life or like stagnant almost, stuck in
yeah.
one space and stir crazy,
Yeah.
that it can feel really good to get the body moving. And I've noticed that for myself as well.
Yeah.
Um, so it almost flipped because instead of rushing around physically from A to B to C in a car, going here to visit with this person, going to this show, we're really rushing around a lot in our minds because we're like, oh, let me log into the Zoom call. Let me attend to this on my website. Let me write this email. But our bodies aren't moving a lot.
Yeah.
So actually, it's been flipped in my experience with my clients and myself. And I've been really curious about that because I always aired more on the slow, gentle, restorative movements myself. And again, this is different for everybody. It's following whatever is intuitive and feels good for you. It also varies per season. So this is one thing that I've been learning, in the winter, it's no matter where you live in the northern hemisphere in the winter, as we're moving into it, it's a time to really go in, replenish, be still. Whereas, when we come into the spring, it's a time to move. And that
Yeah.
feels kind of intuitive as well. So it can change per season.
Okay, talk more about this because I think this is fascinating. I mean, I love the idea of like having seasonal types of movement. I don't think people think about this often. I know that for me this year, I've learned a lot about my cycle as it relates to the cycles of the moon and really looking at changing what I'm eating depending on being at the specific time of the month where I'm ovulating or whether I'm actually in my cycle. It's like the foods that I'm eating are different. Like there's times to eat more carbs, there's times to eat more protein, and really thinking about that even just within a month's time of the seasons our bodies go through in a month. But I like this idea of looking at it through the lens of movement, like seasonally. So can you share your practice of what that looks like for you seasonally, either like each month or just throughout the year?
I love that you work with your hormonal cycle. I'm
Yeah.
so into that. And I'm
It's
no
so
by no means
cool.
it's so cool. I'm no by no means an expert in that. There's plenty of experts, but it's a part of my practice.
Yeah.
And I can speak, to that in terms of seasons too.
Yeah.
If you think of, so we'll start with menstrual, winter.
Mm.
What feels good in menstrual for me, and I don't know, probably for others too, is to just be still. And that's what feels good, in the winter season too, for the most part. It can feel good to balance that stillness out with some movement. But in general, it starts to feel good to cozy in, to sleep a little more, to hibernate.
Yeah.
And then follicular, which is after menstrual cycle, is spring. And
Mm.
so that feels really good to try new things, to move a lot of cardio.
Yeah.
And ovulation, summer, is a time where you're like out doing things with people.
Mm.
So maybe, pre-COVID, I would go out salsa dancing to move.
Yeah.
Or this is when I would plan a performance, or go out with friends dancing, something like really fun and flirty and social.
Yeah.
And then luteal is the fall, and that's more just like starting to slow down again, not being so go hard.
Yeah.
And when I follow my wisdom within the mini cycle of my hormones and the macro cycle of the seasons, I have found so much vitality and well-being. I just started doing that this year.
Yeah.
And it definitely matches the science and magic in me.
I was gonna say, like, what have you experienced doing that, like for a whole year? What's been the benefit?
More ease,
Mm.
not pushing against something that's not natural.
Yeah.
just because it's conditioned. I think we operate a lot on the 24-hour cycle of the male hormonal
I was going
cycle.
to say, yeah, it's like totally masculine.
It is, and it's so, I don't know, I got so passionate about it when I learned about that. I'm like, our bodies are not, like our bodies are not designed to work in this like 9 to 5 structure.
Yeah.
And I'm such a body person that I was like, I've got to try this. So I just feel more ease. I feel feels more natural to me. I feel like I'm more myself.
Mm-hmm.
There's more of a sense of grace in the moments where I do want to rest because I know soon I'll be working out hard again.
Yeah.
Once it's right for my body and once it's in season.
It's so beautiful. And I love this emphasis on the ease, which I just think is one of the most beautiful things about what you teach, is just this invitation into more gentleness, into more attunement, into more alignment. And I just think of like working with your body versus working against it. And so often, because of our masculine kind of patriarchal society here in the West, that it's like, yeah, hustle, 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 do every day, wake up, crank it out, go to sleep, do it again. What's so beautiful about this concept of slowing down to move throughout these hormonal quote unquote seasons within the month, it's like you do get you get variety, you get a lot of different like opportunities for different types of movement, but you're working with your body versus forcing it. So like I'm just like, ease is so vulnerable. Like it's so, like when I think about ease and flow, femininity, all of these aspects that really are natural for us as women, we've just sort of lost that connection. Ooh, like how do you like walk people through being more comfortable with just letting go and entering into ease? Because like I said, it kind of feels like free fall a little bit.
Yeah. So it feels vulnerable in the state of having to surrender a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's in the present moment.
Mm.
So if we can find ease now, no matter where we're at, like as you and I are having this conversation, am I in my body?
Mm.
Do I feel my hips below me on the seat that I'm sitting in? Do I feel my breath? And when you find that ease in the present moment, there's less of this expectation for something in the future. And then it just unravels and unfolds. So it takes the vulnerability out in a sense because you let go of the trying or the striving and you trust that I'm finding ease now and I'm feeling balanced now. And so whatever unravels from that, I'll continue to maintain that state of ease. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it's super helpful. And I think, because I know one of the things that you say is like our natural state as humans is to be at ease. And so if we're in sort of this addictive pattern of stress or anxiety or whatever it is where we don't experience a lot of ease, do you think that movement can help us get back to that place of ease, like especially when we've kind of framed movement as like pushing or competition or punishment or exertion? Like how can movement bring us back to that state of ease?
Movement can be so joyful when it feels good, and we have to rethink how we think of movement too. It can be so many different things. Like we said,
Yeah.
it can be shaking, it can be shifting, it can be rolling your neck out, it can be giving your face a massage. It can be pushing past exertion because like that can give you a runner's high and feel good sometimes when you feel
Yeah.
so stressed out you can't drop into a slow stillness.
Yeah.
It can be salsa dancing. I said that already. I clearly
I love
missed
it.
it. It can be a dance party on your own. And there's something inherently so yummy about moving. I
Yeah.
can feel it in my body if I've gone through a full day, and I'm guilty of this many times, especially in the COVID world, where I've just been like holding my breath in front of the computer on a work binge. I mean, I love my work, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm teaching to be in the body.
Yeah.
So I choose my tool, and that changes day to day. I'm like, what would feel good to me in this moment? Sometimes I go on a really hard run, but looking at the beautiful trees. Sometimes I put on a yin yoga class. Sometimes I put on a meditation, but it always brings me back to my body and and I do want to say that the body, it doesn't always feel easy in the body. I really want to make that clear too. Like anxiety, it's not easy to be with anxiety in the body. It's not easy to be with, feelings of sadness or lethargy. And I would say in those moments, if being in the body feels, inaccessible to you, finding support, finding a practitioner and a professional or a support group to help walk you through that. There's trauma is often held in the body, and so it can, often if we're avoiding movement or we're avoiding stillness or we're avoiding something, can be because there is something in the body that is beyond our capacity to be with. And that's smart for us to not go into that without support.
Yeah.
So also noting that.
I think it's so wise to bring that up, because I think you're right. There are times, and I've worked with clients who that really is, it's like, they're like, I don't know what I'm going to find when I get into the body. And this is where I think if we can redefine what movement is in some ways, like I like what you're talking about, that movement is so expansive. It's not a workout. It doesn't have to just be exercise. What are some of those like little things that people can do that aren't like a full blown, like set aside 30 minutes to do this practice, that even when you're sitting at your desk or just kind of inviting yourself to move in just a tiny little micro way, what are some of those less invasive ways, I guess, to say it? Like if you don't want to have to go into some of that emotional stuff that's been stored in the body without support yet, what are some safe ways to move without it kind of treading into that area?
It's funny, things that you wouldn't normally think of movement that are more interwoven into your day can be really juicy. So playing with kids, getting on the floor, if possible, moving around, kind of wrestling. Cleaning, I consider cleaning to be movement.
Totally.
You're bending down, you're scrubbing, you're reaching up, you're organizing cabinets. These are all forms of movement. I also, like on my, as I work, I don't just sit at the table. I work with my computer in different ways. I lay down on my stomach and type. And then later I maybe lay on my side and type. And then I sit up, and then all from the floor sometimes. So you can work it into your day in a way that's very like functional and intuitive, and not like you have to set aside time to do something else.
Yeah.
Taking a walk is moving. It's getting the body, getting that energy, that momentum moving.
Yeah. I'm just thinking too, like neck circles, like if you're sitting at a desk, just rotating your head around on your neck, shoulder circles, shoulder shrugs. The other thing that I think is such a cool concept of movement, and something that I learned through Kundalini yoga and just a bunch of other kind of embodiment practices, is this concept, and you've mentioned it several times, of shaking. And talk to me about shaking, like, because that's something that we don't do, I think, as adults. Like that's weird for a lot of people, just to shake in the body, like no agenda, just to let it all shake. And it's been one of the most powerful things that I've experienced of getting back into my body. So is there a reason that you know of why shaking is just so great for people to do?
So when you have that stress response, you have all that energy stored up in the body, and shaking helps discharge that energy. So you can pull up videos of animals doing it after they get really, really stressed out. Their bodies will just shake to discharge energy. And we can also do the same. So if like you're driving and you almost get into a fender bender, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like you get this huge surge of energy. And if it's just there, you like kind of keep it. But shaking it out will help discharge it. Like it's okay. I'm safe. Yeah, so it's very intuitive, and it feels so good.
It feels so good. And I'm just laughing thinking about when I had dogs. I was like, oh my God, they did that all the time. Like one of my dogs had anxiety, and she would just shake. And it was like, oh, duh. She was trying to get that out of her body. But you're so right. Like you think about even animals trying to get water off of their back. Like I think about that kind of as a great visual for knowing how to shake, like just, almost like all the way from the top of the spine down to the base of the spine, like shake, 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 shake. And I would imagine it's very just regulating for the nervous system. Like it's gotta be, right?
Yeah, because it's that discharge of energy. It's letting it go. It's releasing something so that you can come back to a state of stillness and balance between those two branches, between the sympathetic and parasympathetic. It's resetting.
Yeah. So beneficial, and something that I think when you're not attaching movement to just being about weight loss or some kind of external result, it's like just, again, feeling it in the body, being able to move it in a way that emotionally just brings you back to center. I mean, just kind of, like you said, discharges that. I think it's such a great word. What would you say are like cues that maybe our body is giving us when we're craving sort of a deeper connection to our bodies? What are some of those cues that are like, just so for people as they're kind of learning how to intuit the body of going, oh, now's the time to move, or now's the time to stretch, or now's the time to whatever. What are some of those clues that people can be on the lookout for that help them go, oh, right, this is that time to go in?
I would say when you're feeling maybe some like achy, like a stagnant, like, oh, I'm kind of getting achy. Like, can I shake out that part of me that's feeling like a little achy? Or if you're holding your breath for a long period of time, it can feel really good to just start moving. If something feels really still in the body, that might be a really good time to get up and walk around or move, to shrug the shoulders, roll the neck, open and close the jaw. Again, I really love giving myself like a face massage or a neck massage. That can feel so good. Yeah, when things are just kind of like paused, it's a feeling of stillness, like not in a way that is peaceful, but more stagnant. When you're starting to feel like that sense of stagnation.
Yeah. It's almost like, I think about like when the air is stale, like whatever the equivalent of that in the body is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's not just about a 30-minute chunk at the beginning of your day or an hour workout. I mean, it really is like, we're talking about this as integrative into our day. I mean, really a part of our lifestyle of just being in this vessel, in this human body, is connected to it throughout the day in ways of moving small, really, really small micro ways to bigger ways. Oh gosh, there's just like so much I want to get into it. I know we don't have time because here we are. We're like closing to the end. I'm like, were we just talking for 5 minutes?
I know.
It's so good. I know that you were sharing before we got on the official recording of the podcast. You were talking about the Radiance Sutras, and so I want to just give you the opportunity to read a little bit of that.
I would love to. So there's a poem that I wanted to share that I love how it portrays the body like in such a delicious way. And my brand is Live Deliciously, and it's how I love to move through the day. So I wanted to share this and read to all of you. The body is made of earth and gold, sky and stars, rivers and oceans, masquerading as muscle and bone. Every substance is here. Diamonds and silver, magical elixirs, ambrosia that gives visions, herbs that nourish and heal, the foundation of the planet, immortal magnetic iron circulating in the blood. In meditation, luxuriate in knowing this deep and simple truth. Every cell is an organ of sense, infused with majesty.
That is delicious. I'm
It's
just like,
so delicious.
oh my God. It's like, if I could eat that, I would.
And I would say, like, with movement, it's that exploration of that majesty.
Yeah.
And it's a unfolding that will occur for the rest of our lives. There's never no final arriving. There's layers upon layers of brilliance within every cell of us, and we each get to explore that in whatever way feels best to us.
What an invitation. I mean, it's just like, to me, I just think, gosh, we've really just missed it, like, and what a beautiful invitation to come back into the depth of enjoying that relationship. And with any relationship, there's so much, there's just opportunity for that depth, for that intimacy. And it's no different in the relationship with our body. Yes. This, I feel like, is just the, sticking our toe into the waters of what is here and the expansiveness that is available in that kind of mind-body connection. So I know people are going to want to stay connected to you and like take a deeper dive. So where can they find you? And is there anything that you're up to that you want to share about?
They can find me on my website, amandaleaveck.com. And I am not on social media very much, but I did launch a text message list. Nice. Where I offer kind words. So I think there's so much harsh rhetoric and language that's going on around our world right now. And I send, weekly, just like a kind little message out to my text message list. So that would be a good way to just kind of dip your toes in the water. I have an email list as well, and you'll find lots of other goodies on my website. I have a meditation album that helps you explore and embody your own nervous system. That might be a good way.
Girl, my listeners are all about that. So y'all head over to Amanda's site. I'll make sure to link to all of that. And what a gift to be able to get like a positive message on your phone. That's so beautiful. Girl, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, giving us an opportunity to look at this from a different lens, and one that really is so delicious and so luxurious and so healing. I mean, truly, like at the deepest level, so healing. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, guys, y'all know that next week is the final and last episode for this month's topic of body movement. But please make sure to share this episode with the ones that you love, even the ones that you don't know so well. Share it publicly, because you never know how this can impact somebody's life. And make sure to tag me, tag Amanda, and we are going to have a beautiful final session next week. But until then, remember that the purpose of life is to be grateful, to be great, and to be full. See y'all next week. Bye. Hey y'all, thanks so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you got some amazing nuggets to take home and start implementing into your life. And if you're looking for the show notes and links, head on over to maryhyatt.com/show. And if you loved it, why not bring your girlfriends along this journey of becoming fully alive with you? Just give a quick share of this episode to your social channels and enjoy those debriefing convos with your besties. Thanks again, and I can't wait to connect with you next week.